2019 presidential election on Wednesday, which is today. Now, we heard the news. How many of us were surprised or not alarmed by that? We expected this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, looking at the vote counts, I was particularly focused on the Midwest. I said Midwest. Look at me, on the Middle Belt. So, Benue, Nasarawa, Plateau. When the numbers started coming in and the president was doing better than I expected, that's when I was like, okay, it's pretty much over because of the herdsmen crisis. I think Benue flipped though from APC to PDP, partly in part because of the herdsman crisis. So I thought that was going to spread across the middle belt, and it did not. And for the opposition, the main opposition candidate to have won this election, he had to sweep the middle belt as well as hold on to all the states. Jonathan, when that didn't happen, I wasn't surprised anymore.
Okay. And then, let's look at Adedunmade. Let's look at the conduct of the election.
Yes, let's start from the very beginning, because before there was a result, there was an election which took place on the 23rd of February. First of all, we haven't really talked about this. We have had Lagos Talks edition, but first of all, from the postponement, then to the 23rd, we had reports of some violent ballot snatching, despite what was supposed to be a more secure conduct of the elections this year. What do you have to say about this, Adedunmade?
Well, I think a lot of people ask themselves this question: was this election free and fair? Now, this question, in answering it, some will have to be objective, because for some people they might say yes, it was free and fair, but for the people that were disenfranchised, people that were not allowed to vote, people that were assaulted, people who had to run away from gunshots, those people will come out and tell you it was not free and fair. So yes, I don't believe this election was free and fair generally, especially when you put into consideration all the factors that need to be considered in such a thing. So now,
what factors precisely? I mean, if you look at anomalies, understandable, but what other factors?
Okay. One, the ability the process. Let's even talk about the process. The process was so cumbersome. Although they tried to do something this time, which I commend them for. They tried to do accreditation and voting alongside.
I think it's important for us to look at the positives as well as the negatives, because there were some positives.
Yes, that was great. That was great. But the truth is that some people still continue to be disenfranchised, even till now. So, but I know some people might be, what should I say, might be excited that Buhari won.
Of course.
Yeah, many congratulatory messages came this morning.
Yeah, okay, so I think it's very important to, and that's, if I respect Adumade's opinion, but the last election that was widely condemned on a global front was 2007.
Yes.
Yeah, that international observers said that was a rigged election, and it was not. So, but here's the thing: since 2011. In Nigeria, elections have generally, I say that carefully, generally been free and fair. Now, there are pockets of violence, there are pockets of, some malpractice here and there. You're going to have that. Even in the United States, there were things that were happening over there.
Still investigating Russia.
Yes, exactly, still investigating Russia. But by and large, these instances that Adedunmade has mentioned, that people have talked about, and please, again, I want to stress this, people were affected. But it was not enough on a wide scale to subvert the will of the majority. The will of the majority has been factored in, and I believe this election was generally free and fair.
So, understandably, by the way, Lagos, we just got joined by Justin. Justin just joined us in the studio.
Morning, Lagos.
Justin, you heard the exciting news? Air quotes on that exciting word?
Interesting news. Congratulations to Mr. President on his re-election.
Now,
Nigeria, it's time to move forward with governance.
That's not all you're going to say, because I'm going to ask you a question precisely around the attitude of the elite, so to speak, because there's a widespread conversation that's directed at our reactions or our actions towards making our decisions, making making our choices in terms of the election. Most people, especially the elite, and I pick them as an instance, they said the elites were more concerned about spreading rhetoric on social media and ignored the actual voting itself. What would you consider as the factors that affect that?
Well, world over, the elite, the 1%, however you want to define them, typically lives in a bubble, right? We live in an alternate universe where we imagine that we run things, but for the most part, things run we. Okay. Things run we. To make it more specific to our country, to Nigeria, the way our electoral system is structured, the way the country itself is structured geospatially, right? The distribution of humans across Nigeria and the income disparities that draw the line between the elite and we the people, we the masses.
Don't put yourself there.
I'm part of we the people, please.
Okay.
It leaves us in a position where, while we stay in our glass houses, in our insular spaces, in our echo chambers, and through rhetoric back and forth, the people who are actually politically savvy, the electoral elite are the masses. They are the ones who will brave sun, wind, rain, and stand out there and actually make it count. So I had an interesting conversation while we were waiting for the results to be fully announced, and I said to someone, it's either we are not 20 million people in Lagos, or there's something really wrong with those 19 million people who didn't turn up. And this is from a strictly non-partisan perspective, right? If 20 million people are recorded as residents in Lagos, can somebody confirm what the actual number of people who collected their PVCs
was? 6 million. 6 million were registered.
So 6 million people got their PVCs. So let's work with that figure. 1/6 of that figure turned up on election day, and I would dare say that, at the risk of being contradicted, I would say that Lagos was largely, I'm mindful of what happened at the Kota and other, but Lagos was largely peaceful.
Yes, there are reports that it was largely peaceful. So apart from these areas,
where these 5 million people, and by the way, I was out there, so I was in the house. Where were these other 5 million people who didn't turn up?
So let's hold that question up to the masses to respond to, and all of us in the studio. Lagos, if you just joined us, this is the Lagos Talk Special. We're reviewing the activities of the election. It's true, the presidential election whose results were just called announced the early hours of today. Analysts are on Twitter at Rotus, at Adedunmade, who's in the studio with us, at Justin Ijeh as well. Let's take a break. We'll be back to talk some more.
This trend that has been going on.
There
was a collation by CSOs.
After my dog.
And they said there was actually a PDP that was.
The reason it's fake news.
it's
It's so hard for them. It's so hard for them to accept because everybody was demonizing
David stood up how easily
after
you
they told you the baby
accepted.
Ayo, that's the only way to do it. So the man has support.
No, that was the video when they bought in the forms.
I can't say because he's been bad for the
economy.
economy.
He's nomination form.
He should lose.
Yes, that was when they bought in the nomination form. That he was crying. They just brought the video.
Subsidies are too expensive. You can't be spending. There are people who are like, yes, keep it down. I want to pay 18 naira or 20 naira for fuel. It's helping poor people. So the economics doesn't make sense. But the masses, as Oga has mentioned, it works for them. Trader money. I did not realize the impact of that trader money. It worked for them. You know, that 10K for traders, it pushed it works, and it's socialism. It's expensive. It doesn't work.
I think that's the kind of government that would actually work in Nigeria.
No, it's not socialism.
It's expensive though.
It's electoral fraud.
No.
Basically, that's what it was. That's why you said it worked for them because they used it as a gimmick.
I like that. Can you bring up that trader money because there's been a debate
I was in the
Ten seconds in.
Okay.
You know it can be. From Badagry to Ekpe, my city is Lagos.
Mics are up. This is Lagos Talks 981. It's a part of Smith's Breakfast with Ayo.
Valentine.
We're in the studio this morning and reflecting on this election so far. So it's a Lagos Talk special. We are joined by 3 gentlemen to analyze all the stories and all the activities with us. Rotus is Rotus, Adedunmade by the same handle on Twitter, and at Justin Ijeh by the same name as well. So I mean, it's very interesting because we're having this conversation. It's a continuing conversation. And before we came back from the break, Rotus, you mentioned something about socialism because people have been suggesting different systems of government. I'm sorry, I had to
Right.
bring that up.
Of course, of course, of
Well,
course.
socialism is a range of economic and social systems characterized by social ownership of the means of production and workers' self-management, and goes on and on. But really reflects on how people are influenced, or influenced.
Well, okay,
by,
so
monetary terms.
if you look at the difference between the two main candidates, Buhari is perceived to be a socialist because he wants much of the spending and control of things to be in the hands of governments. Yeah. Atiku was seen as a capitalist. He wanted to float the naira. He wanted to sell NNPC and privatize it. He was part of the administration with OBJ that privatized telecoms when they sold, privatized Nitel, sold licenses to your MTNs, your Glos, and all these telecoms. And then they came in. We all have cell phones now. We all have our WhatsApps. People are sending messages on WhatsApp. They provided jobs, blah, blah, blah. So the thing is, the impact that Buhari's policies had on the poor were felt. I mean, you know, people have, I know the panelists, they kind of differ, but if you look at things like Trader Money, for example, Empower,
one of the some of the
initiatives, these are all government funded initiatives. Empower, the government was paying money to take graduates and place them in schools and training centers so that they could get jobs, right?
I'm glad you mentioned Trader Money, because in one instance we heard several news stories have carried it where the other parties, major opposition parties, have reacted negatively to the Trader Money, calling it a direct incentive, and some people say it was vote buying.
Right, which is, and I can understand that, but the economics of it is that you are giving money to traders who need it in order to buy more inventory so that businesses can survive.
And it can boost the economy.
And it can boost them. So again, for a trader, it's a minute guy who is selling chewing gum, ice creams, and stuff like that. That really had an impact, and so. The thing is, if you look at how Lagos voted, they say the elites voted for Atiku, and then more of the common man voted for Buhari. The whole socialist policies, while they're expensive and Nigeria has its revenue issues, I don't know, we might get into that later, but it worked for him. And if you tell the common man on the street, a trader, if they accepted that and it helped them, they'll say yes. You know.
I'm glad you talk about how expensive a socialist government is, because the next thing I'd like to ask is how sustainable is this? Because then you talk about it being vote buying, because if you're not able to sustain it, then
that's okay. So 2017 federal government revenue was 2.7 trillion naira. It's the lowest that it's been in about 6 years. Our revenue has continued to drop. In 2017, in fact, revenue from oil was not enough to pay salaries. So, and then there was the oil crash in 2015. So Nigeria we don't have enough money. You've talked on Lagos Talks extensively about the minimum wage.
Yes.
We can't afford it, right? Where's the money going to come from? We've had to borrow. So borrowing has increased. So what Ayo has just mentioned now, there isn't not much money to maintain all these empowers and trader monies and stuff like that. Anchor borrowers program with agriculture.
Right.
But his central policy, he believes in his heart that the government is supposed to provide for the poor and with welfare. Okay. And so on the other side, people say it's not expensive, you can't maintain it. That's
so to link up, I mean, Justin, go ahead.
Okay, so let's not conflate socialism with Buhariism.
Okay.
And that's actually a word.
Okay.
Check your dictionaries, guys. There is a word in the English dictionary today called Buhariism.
What is Buhariism?
It's a descriptive for the political and social and economic ideologies of President Buhari of Nigeria.
I'll define it. In the politics of Nigeria, Buhariism is economic principles and political ideology of the military-led government of Nigeria, headed by President Muhammadu Buhari from December 31st, 1983 to 1985. So it's okay.
Yeah, but that's when he was a military guy.
Exactly.
He's a civilian now.
No, but it's still a system of government.
His approach hasn't changed from the perspective of his policy position.
Right.
Yes, his perspective may have changed from a democratic point of view. He wants power from the ballots, not from the bullets.
Right.
Okay, but his ideologies haven't changed. Now that's what we've been describing as socialism here. I just wanted us to correct that. Okay. Because socialism is a whole other different kettle of fish. There are certain things that need to be in place if you actually want to run a socialist system. By the way, this is a spectrum, right? You're either far left, far right, right? Which is capitalism, socialism. There's a middle ground, right? You cannot make claim or lay claim to running a socialist system when you cannot identify the number of people who are in that system. So if you wanted to implement such an ideology, first things first, we will deal with identity. Who are we? Who are the people we are running social programs for. Because if I want to run social programs, I should be able to budget for it. Money is key to it, like you rightly said, right?
Yes.
So I need to know if I'm running it. For me to actually be able to cost what it would take to run program X, I need to know how many people will be catered to by program X.
Okay.
Nobody in Nigeria can do that today, right? Trader money, we cannot really say how many traders we were going to cater for out of the gate. It was an ad hoc, let's deal with it as we go along, cross that bridge when we get their situation, so let's not conflict with the socialism.
Okay, but no, sorry, I have to respond to that. They think, whether you're saying from a data perspective, we don't know how many Nigerians there are in this country, right? As far as census, that's why
there's an estimated 100.
right. So, but
Nigerians.
yeah, but there's still an estimate, and so whether or not you know how many people there are in Nigeria, there's still money that was expended by Buhari to take care. Their welfare program, the school feeding program, is a welfare program. How many students do we have in Nigeria?
I
We
don't
don't know.
disagree.
Right. So the point,
Welfareism is also a different thing.
right, but what I'm saying is that socialism, though, is Venezuela is a socialist government. Venezuela has one of the cheapest costs. Venezuela's fuel in Venezuela is cheaper than Nigeria,
Yes.
right? So there's much of the Central American, South American nations are socialists, you know. So the thing is, if the closest system of government that you can attribute to President Buhari is socialism, because he believes
It
that
goes on the spectrum.
right,
yes.
okay, with spectrum, he believes that government should take it is government's responsibility whether they have money or not
To take care,
of the poor. Yeah.
So from 2015, their mantra was "Let's fight corruption. Let's fight corruption." That was the primary motive. That was the change mantra that they were singing, and they were fighting corruption. And it seemed like the direction switched to "Let's gather money." And gather money for the country.
The economy became the focus.
The economy, boosting the economy became the focus, but
Yeah.
we've been noticing a steady decline, or rather, an increase in the debt profile of Nigeria. Right now, as statistics stands, in fact, as the earliest statistic, December 2018, over 42.3 million Nigerians are below the poverty line.
And we know that's going to increase. Because, hey,
Well,
that's
why do you
why
say so?
So in the next 4 years, what's to be expected?
In the next 4 years, I don't believe we're going to see a lot of improvement in the economy, sadly, because we are not even in the right position to attract FDI. Even while we're talking today, we're talking about
100 billion that Saudi Arabia gave to India.
Yeah, you know, and why shouldn't that be coming to us? Well, because we are not putting our house right. For instance, now there's a lot of legislation that should be passed by now, or at least should be deliberated by the National Assembly at this point. That is not even the case. Now there are a couple of bills that has been forwarded to President Buhari for signing. He has this on his table. They've been there for months. Some of these bills are supposed to help boost productivity even within the nation. Look at the Companies and Allied Matters Act. He has had that with him for so long. He has refused to sign that.
Well, what's the refusal for? Because if, like you mentioned, it's meant to boost the economy and they're big on this, why is he not signing?
Well, I guess we'll have to ask him that question.
Well, of
Because he has said that, yes, so there are some irregularities.
Right, let's take this call. So Lagos Talks 981. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Hello. Good morning to you. What is your name, please? Where are you calling from, Nelson Obioma? Okay, thank you for joining us. Please go ahead. Well, register. What? When you say they, you're referring to the INEC officials? What was your polling unit? Which one was your polling unit?
All right, PU00. What area was this?
Shangotedo.
Shangotedo. All right, okay. And these are some of the. Thank you so much.
Okay. Right
These
now,
are some of the questions that we're asking with regards to the conduct of the elections, because we have another one coming up on next week Saturday,
right.
And of course, in 4 years' time, we're going back to the polls.
Yeah, so now I don't want to put my location at risk, but I live in Sangotedo, right? So I don't know. and I know, right? So the thing is, I think people should be careful. And Nelson, thanks for your call, but I think people should be careful not to say they didn't allow us to vote. Look, I came home. I returned back here into Nigeria in 2010. Right? I was excited to vote in 2011. 2015, I couldn't vote for president because the election officials, they didn't show up to our polling units. They didn't come. They told us they'll come back on Sunday. We came. They didn't show up. But the gubernatorial election the next week, I was able to vote. This year, everything was fine. I went there. I was accredited. I voted immediately. So there's inefficiencies. I don't want to confuse what's inefficient with some kind of deliberate scheme to say these people in Shango Tedo or wherever will not vote.
Suggesting such.
Right. So it's the inefficiencies that.
But he hinted at the fact that his name was not on the voters
right.
register,
Which
might explain that. But it's interesting you mentioned that because we're looking at inefficiencies, and I can't help but think about the inefficiencies with on the part of the electoral officers,
right?
The resident electoral officers. We see a case in point, the story that we treated today, and you saw yesterday, Justin, and I'm sure you want to speak about that because it was about a resident electoral officer who arrived at his polling unit drunk.
Yeah,
incoherent. All right, let's take this phone call.
We'll come back to you.
We'll come back to that. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Chika. How are you? Where are you calling from today? Go ahead. All right, Chika. Okay, Chika. Thank you, Chika.
All right, thank you, Chika.
All right. Okay.
Reactions?
Well, I mean, look, thanks, Chika. Okay, so the thing I just want to be clear though. This is
actually,
Buhari's.
Hold on,
okay.
Rotus. Just 1 second. We'll come back because I don't want to interrupt you once you've started
Fine,
your analysis.
fine.
We'll go on a break. When we come back, Rotus will continue with his comment. Thank you.
Yeah, what I mean the whole.
So hold your thoughts.
I know. Just the whole bona fide definition. Yeah, but that is. I'm talking about how the man feels, right? You know.
You see, that is
Yeah, fine, but I'm talking about Buhari himself. I'm talking about
He's a
him.
Buharist. He has his own philosophy. Get it into your head.
How do you know how he feels? That's
No,
what
if it's not because he's talking. Look at how he talks about rich people, about the wealthy and the elites. You know, he feels that look, I'm a man for the poor, and we should. Whether or not,
Because
see,
I've never
again,
gotten that.
people keep talking about how it's executed. Whether it's executed as
You don't
rubbish
talk that
or it doesn't.
much.
Right.
I know what I think.
He just became very vocal the last few days.
Two broadcasts in 2 days. He has
That's
like 4 years of nothing.
And now that he has given his speech, we'll probably not hear from him for the next 4
I
years.
cannot tell. So
guy has been bumblebee for like 4 years or something. What is broken?
Yeah, no, I'm just going by. I'm going. If just again, your empower, your trader money, it's all government. There's no efforts to say, oh, you're private enterprise. Come and help us. Government. So that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. Is socialist tendencies.
Is that not a traditional system of government? So he's very old school in his thinking and
yes,
approach to government.
very.
The new school people, which Obasanjo was trying to do, and which I think works quite well for the Nigerian economy.
Sorry. Mics up. Studio silence, please. In the next 20 minutes, we're still going to have the conversation around the effort so far placed by INEC, Independent National Electoral Commission, in the elections that have been conducted. Are still ongoing. We have in the studio the analysts joining us, Rotus at Rosancourt, Adedunmade at Justin Ijeh. Lagos, to call, please call only this number, 0144899981, and messages only go to
0809 444
All right, so just very quickly, I don't want anybody to think I'm defining the Nigerian government as a socialist government, right? I just specifically was talking about the inclinations of the president based on the programs that he has supported.
Yes.
He has socialist leanings. Once again, Empower, Trader Money, the Anchor Borrowers Program, all government-funded initiatives. He doesn't seem to want to bring the private company, private enterprise into the equation. So just to put that out there, yeah.
We have messages on WhatsApp though. This one, Niowa says to Adedunmade, say it with your chest. It was not fair. How did the total votes counted become more than the total registered voters count? Carried in from a papa sent in a message. That is erroneous. We know. So let's carry it from a papa said. Good morning, guys. No, moving on from that, it says the entire population of Lagos is not the voting population. We have those below the age, we have those who do not register in Lagos, and those who either do not have their cards or are too old to vote. Let's focus on the 6 million registered voters and analyze based on that.
I believe that's what we've been doing, and I think it's good at this point to ask to respond to the first comment, Adedunmade, with regards to how it works. So we know some people were talking about a 25% majority, a simple majority who was going to be announced at the end of the day, because it was quite close in terms of the number of states that was won. So 70, I think it was 17 to 18 or thereabouts.
Yeah,
19 to 18 states, yes. So
19 to 17.
To 17
yes.
states. Thank you. So 19 to 17 states, very close. So
including the FCT.
Yes, including the 36 states. Yeah. So how was this measured? What was it done? On this occasion, was a simple majority that was considered. But in other terms, it has been said that you have to win 25% of a certain number of states. Can you please break it down to us, so that we can understand that better?
Well, that's actually a constitutional provision.
Yeah.
No, I actually need to bring that up. Well, basically, what it says is, according to what you just said, which is simple majority, if not by simple majority, then 25%. But now, at least this time, we had the simple majority working for us, because I remember that at the time when the count was on at about, I think, the 10th state, people already said Buhari had already made the 25% simple majority, if at all. That was going to be the way by which it was going to be calculated. And I think it was at close to that time that I just lost the interest in the count, because I just figured that, okay, no, this thing is already won by Buhari in the same sense. But before the end of the show, I'm going to bring up the constitutional provision that actually provides for that and state exactly what it says.
Thank you, Adedunmade. Justin, I'll come back to you on the processes and the efficiency applied in the conduct so far by the Independent National Electoral Commission. The case in point being the Resident Electoral Commissioner who showed up drunk. So what does that say to the level of training or discipline in the individuals picked out for these roles?
Well, it goes beyond INEC's preparation, and that's not so absolving, because INEC has demonstrated chronic case of systemic incompetence, right? But here's the thing about modern human society. I will repeat this until it becomes my personal motto on air.
Okay.
When you murder the imperative of consequence, anything goes. Chaos ensues. The glue that holds modern human society together is the assurance that your freedoms are curtailed. Right?
Cause and effect.
Exactly.
So to speak.
Effect. We are all free human beings. When we come together in society, each individual yields his freedom to the collective assurance of protection and security. Now, when anybody withdraws from that account and there is no balancing factor, everything falls apart. Let me stop speaking in abstract. No, I don't know the stats. It's actually a valid talking point that we should investigate. How many people in the history of our modern democracy have been jailed for electoral malpractice? How many breakers of the electoral law have been tried and jailed? I find it hard to draw on any reference point for that. Okay, but the sentiment I'm trying to express here is that until we begin to punish people, last elections, the last 2015 elections, there were cases of electoral officers misbehaving, Nigerians generally breaking the electoral laws. It was all covered up and we all sang Kumbaya and we moved on. Here we are again in 2019, it's happened again. So this specific gentleman showed up at his polling unit where he was supposed to be electoral officer, drunk. INEC recruits academicians. So this was a professor,
yes,
I think.
Yes.
It was a
senior lecturer.
Okay. Yes. So I will take a minimum standard of personal responsibility for granted in such a case, right?
Yeah.
Enlightenment and all of that. But he shows up there drunk, okay? And then somebody has to step in. By stepping in, that person also, even though he's trying to do a good thing to make sure the elections go on in that unit, he actually breaks an electoral law.
Yes.
Because there's a process to replacing an electoral officer. And how did we find out? On international TV, when they are called upon to present the results for that unit. Gentlemen, who are you? You're not the electoral officer. He said, no, actually. And they start telling us this grandmama story of, that bros, he showed up drunk, and then we came and bottom line is, who is going to be held to account for this? Elections results have now been announced. Mr. President has won. We are hopefully going to move on with governance and healing the wounds of the country. But part of healing that wound is making sure that people get punished for how they contributed to systemic failure.
The lecturer was fired. I don't know if that's enough penalty.
No, that's not enough penalty.
It's about
he broke a law.
Due process.
He broke a law. Firing him is just one thing.
See, a lot of these things, why there is no prosecution at the end of the day, is because a lot of these things are facilitated by the politicians, especially people who are in positions of governorship. They are the ones that are supposed to, especially garner support in order to fight such acts. They are also the people that are supposed, the police is supposed to make arrests, yes. But of course, because there is no political will, because most of these political parties are actually the beneficiaries of some of these unlawful acts that he's saying. So because there's no political will to prosecute those kind of people, then of course we'll just continue to go like this. And there is something important that he said earlier, which is about consequence. Now, this government, this administration, which is continuing now, has set what I would call a tide that says that we can do things without consequence. We can put out the rule of law without consequence. We can suspend the rule of law without.
Just one.
On the rule of law, I have a long list.
Just one.
Okay, let's start with Asuki. 6 courts have said they should release him.
The shared leader, El Zakzaki.
That's the second example.
I think you made I can admit that in court.
Yeah.
We'll go to the phone lines right now. Please, would like to encourage everyone to keep your comments very short and straight to the point so that we can move on very quickly with this discussion. So please make it straight to the point and brief. Thank you very much.
What is your name, please? All right, Lawrence, please go ahead. You have 60 seconds.
Talking about this topic to just to talk and move ahead. We need to do stuff and we'll make this country go forward. Or else we'll just be talking about 4 years is going to come again. We're thinking we're going to do that. That's
all right. Thank you very much, Lawrence.
Real quick, Justin mentioned INEC being a systemic case of inefficiency, and I agree with that, right? But INEC, if you look at the process of collation of these votes, INEC, the process is a microcosm of how our economy works. It's centralized, yeah? So all the states had their results, and then everybody travels to Abuja. You had this panel sitting there. We talked about this on Business Express yesterday.
If a car breaks down on the way, then you factor that in, and everybody now gets to wait.
Exactly, and it was a very slow process, laborious. It took it took like 2-3 days for the results to come out. Lawrence just talked about moving forward. Days and nights, exactly. I think they finished at 3 a.m. this morning or so. Lawrence talked about moving the country forward. There has to be pressure from the polity to consider electronic voting at some point, whether it's the ATMs, whether it's SMS, because this paper ballot system is not something that is efficient, right? So if you want to talk about moving forward, we have, and people say that the laws have to be changed and so, but who is going to put pressure on the elected officials to change these laws? It's us. So there has to be that pressure to say, look, let's test it in one state, let's test it in one constituency. Where is the tech that is going to allow us to do this? And so that's how you talk about moving forward and trying to get, because as Lawrence said, 4 years from now we'll be having the same conversation, so somebody has to bring that up.
All right. We'll have calls coming in on the phone line 014489.
Hello, good morning. Hello.
Good morning to you. What is your name?
All right, Ijeh, please make it short. All right, thank you.
That there are no things the government of Buhari has done. Mention roads, you can't see anything. I think don't let bias there. Yes, the government may not have done well, but at least we have seen the way I'm seeing things panning out, like the conservatives and the progressives. We are now seeing it's fine, and that's how it should be. We have the conservatives and then the progressives. For me, we should have known that the two candidates are not the best for Nigeria. But we just have to choose out of the two evils. And Nigeria has chosen.
Point of correction though, Lawrence, there were 72 candidates, not just 2. Yes. I mean, but it's fine. I mean, it's just something.
I think it's important that you keep reminding us.
72 candidates. 70 were largely ignored, and then 2 were focused on. But go ahead.
Are not the best for Nigeria. But we just have to. And Nigeria has decided. Let's respect Nigeria's decision. Yes, the election may not be perfect. Even in America, it's not perfect. So, but from what is happening, look at the Senate. New entrants, 66 senators. By the time we finish the counting, maybe out of 109, we'll be seeing about 70 new entrants. And some incumbents were defeated. So, it's telling us something. So there's improvement for me. There is improvement. By 2023, it's going to be better than this.
Amen. Thank you, Lawrence. Justin?
Yeah, I wanted to lay on top of what Rotus was saying before we took that call. So there are a lot of things in Nigeria that the general public is not aware of, and therefore it becomes difficult for you to even begin to hold your representatives accountable for. And let me blow the whistle on one of those things. So some years ago I walked.
So are you getting 5% just before you say it?
No, it's not here. So some years ago I worked on a national project, the current national ID project, right? The one that is actually working.
ID card project. Yeah.
Yes. So where you get your NIN, with NIMC. Now, so it's layered, and I can tell you that first of all, that project was private sector driven. That's how come I was involved. If it wasn't that way, you would never have seen the light of day. Because even at that, it was an uphill task from the government side of things. There were policies that needed to be announced. But Sokunjo was very instrumental to a lot of what happened back then, was she pushed the case. Now, let me tell you what was done. That national ID project comprises of your NIN and then the national ID card. Now, a lot of rhetoric going around is actually complaining about, oh, why don't we integrate the data that we're collecting all over the place? The groundwork has already been laid, people. that NIN and that database sitting behind it was actually designed in such a way that all of the data is going to be integral. By law, NIMC is actually the only government institution in Nigeria today authorized to collect biometric data. Everybody else who is doing it illegally.
Like BVN?
Exactly. There was a
BVN.
huge fight. There was a huge fight between
Passport.
CBN and NIMC then. Yes.
Wait. So you're saying BVN is illegal?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you see,
It's contrary to the constitutional. You know, NIMC was set up by a law that is they've not added into the constitution, something like that. Now, what you have is a situation where. So let me tell you how it was normalized. A gazette was issued by the Jonathan administration that actually allowed the CBN under the aegis of NIMC, but this happened after the fact, to go ahead with BVN. So they normalized it by doing that. But when they started it, it was contrary to the existing law.
Alright, please hold that thought. We'll continue this conversation and the analysis right after this break, alright? If you're just
Nigerians need to know.
If you're just joining us right now, well, it's a can of worms that's laying up from here in the studio. Lagos Talks 981 will continue after this.
Oga, what are you saying?
Listen,
It's not illegal.
Wait, listen. What are you saying? BVN is illegal. Dude, just let me come. Are you guys going to allow somebody to
Hold
access?
on.
That's
That's why
what
he
you
has
had,
to
it was
challenge.
normalized.
Yes. He
I
had
also
to,
had- it
he
was
had to lie.
normalized.
First of all,
Yes.
he
Listen
was,
what I'm
he
saying.
was
Okay.
getting
When
some-
the
Yeah.
BV, I was in the bank when they started.
Yeah,
So I was
yeah,
sitting
yeah.
on both sides. I was on the bank side, right? And I was on the NIMSI project side, representing a bank.
Right.
Right? So there was a war behind the scenes. The DGNIMC said, no, this is not going to happen. But you know how power plays out in Nigeria. The CBN governor was a powerful figure and all that. So there was a lot of horse trading. But the DG stood his ground and said, this is the law that set up. So what you people are doing is illegal. So the consensus was, okay, let's create a pathway that allows the BVN project to go ahead. And at the end of the day, you guys will find a way to handle it. So
Okay.
the wise paper was gazetted. Right?
So what he concluded at the end was that when the process started, it was illegal.
Right, but it's
Before
no longer.
the end
No
of
longer
May.
Oh.
Before the
That's
end
all.
of May.
He said
So
that
when
before
you
he
come
got-
back-
You already
Oh.
switched off.
Yeah,
I was waiting.
what?
When you come back,
Man,
I'll clarify.
please don't clarify, because I'm telling you that people who are hearing that
No,
thing,
Yeah,
are
but
like,
just
what?
emphasize. But you said he did say that.
Okay,
That was
okay,
a-
okay,
that was a
okay, cool.
gazette that was
But the
Right,
point
right,
the
right.
point I'm driving at.
Yeah.
I don't speak.
Yeah, is
That ID is a very sophisticated chip. It's not a normal chip. That chip has provision for about 21 applets. Now, when I say applets, think your driver's license. Think
FRF, Federal Road Safety
right?
Commission, yeah.
Yes. So it was designed for 21. We started with 5. The 5 that were enabled for were health, the NIN itself, driver's license, voter ID, and finance.
So what's the problem? Why haven't it been harmonized?
There's this.
You can't leave it at once.
It's you see all the things we complain about.
Yes.
That program. That's
Okay.
the magic word.
Yeah.
It solves
Alright, guys, we're back.
everything, because if you solve ID, you solve everything. Now,
Yeah.
guess who in this country doesn't want ID solved? One guess.
Alright.
They fired the DG immediately we finished the process. Brought out one northern guy who had retired and made him the current DG.
Alright, studio. Mics are up.
I ain't saying that on
Oh, by the way, we have only 4 minutes left.
4 minutes, so yeah.
Studio.
Justin.
If you just joined us, well, welcome. You're the last bit of Lagos Talks 981. It's a special talking about the activities of the INEC, Independent National Electoral Commission, the new regime, and anticipation for the new year, or the rest of the new year, the next 4 years. But before the break, Justin was given an interesting insight into the BVN and certain activities that's been happening in Nigeria. For now, we know there are over 36 million BVN, that's unique identities for Nigerians, available. But there's this rising question of why it hasn't been harmonized and applied even to the electoral process.
Yeah, so at the beginning, just to clarify what I was saying before my break, at the beginning of the BVN project, there were legal issues between the CBN and NIMC, which is enabled by law as the only body authorized to collect biometric data in the country. So how the Jonathan administration resolved that then was to say that, okay, create a pathway between both organizations, right, where a white paper was issued and the BVN project was allowed to go ahead with a proviso that the data would be integrated back into NIMC eventually. I personally think that if the country has the will, if the administration has the will to push forward with the NIMC project as designed, first of all, the institution is highly underfunded, right? And with that situation, it's not able to actualize what it's actually capable of doing.
Yes.
The design of the project is that the national ID card itself has an embedded chip that contains applications for various sectors of the economy. So there's your national ID itself, the NIN applet. There's a health applet, so we can integrate the the NHIs into it. There's the driver's license applet that allows you to integrate FRSC into it. There's the voter ID applet, and there's the finance applet because it also has a payment chip.
So what is stalling it? If this is going to be to solve most of our data problems,
the technology has been done, has been implemented. This thing is good to go, but the will to do it is not there because it changes the game for us in this country. We've solved ID, we've solved everything that needs to be solved.
Okay, so what you're trying to say is that if this thing works, we'll actually be able to capture the actual number of Nigerians we have.
We will know you. We will be able to track your activity across sectors.
Wow,
health and all of that.
Sounds like an ad.
Because I mean, it's very. I would say common sense, but it's not that common anymore. But I would say that it would definitely reduce the costs that largely that's
it
being
will reduce the cost of everything, the cost of governance, the cost of elections, even the way we share our national resources, the way we share the money, the way each state gets its own part of it, it's going to affect that as well.
Alright, let's do quick messages here. Adinka from Ikeja Airport says, I missed my flight, but thanks to you guys for keeping me company. So I believe we're long overdue for another population census. Are we 20 million in Lagos? We need to stop guessing. Let's census. The last census was in 2006.
March 2006.
I'm just weak at that data
We
information.
don't need a census. Census are always manipulated.
Not always.
So we need we just need that scheme to work. We just need that scheme to work, and I think it's important because these are the kind of conversations we should start to have with our political officers and those who want to or who are vying for elections. I don't think this question came up in the debate at all. Questions about what's happening with NIMC, questions around identity, questions about how we're capturing data. So I think it's things that we need to start
Exactly. Moving forward, the kind of questions we should ask. What's the first question you would ask a governorship candidate that's aspiring in the next coming election?
How do you create jobs? How do you make the business environment, more comfortable for private enterprise? Those are the things that need to be focused on. It's jobs. There are so many youth that are unemployed. The businesses that have been closing down because of the environment. So we really have to focus on economic activity and putting people to work so they can feed themselves and their families.
All right, I'll take that further and ask, with your experience in business, if you were to give one suggestion, what suggestion would it be in order to solve that problem?
It's private enterprise. Look at telcos. If you know anybody that's in a call center, any IT person that fixes a mobile phone, anybody that sells phone accessories, those are all jobs that were created from telcos, private enterprise coming in here and providing mobile phone service to all of us that are here. So it's a multiplier effect. So private enterprise is at the heart of how this is supposed to work.
Adedunmade, your counsel for your fellow legal luminaries.
Hey, Governor, I'm going to ask two questions. The first one is this: we know every state needs to make more money, and in order to do that, you need to be in control of the natural resources within your state. So how are you going to get the federal government to get you to do that? Are you going to work with your senators who will also engage other members of the Senate to ensure that the Constitution is amended to empower states to have control of their resources? Then secondly, are you going to empower the judiciary financially, independently? Because what we have now is the judiciary always has to go and beg the governor for money. Please, we want to buy cars. Please buy cars for us. Please build courts for us. So if we continue to do that, our judiciary is going to go nowhere, because the executive, I don't think they want the judiciary to go far.
Justin, parting shot, please.
So here's the thing. I'm a long-term thinker. I would be interested in any candidate speaking to me about how they are going to build an army of young, educated, employable entrepreneurs out of the population of their state.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Yes,
And
it has been.
I will be back at 6 a.m. tomorrow. hopefully to continue the positivity, because it's something we really need to hold on to and act some more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lagos, for being a part of this discussion. Thanks for your comments on WhatsApp, on Twitter, and of course your phone calls as well. Join us tomorrow, like Valentine mentioned. We're here from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and Rotus is in between somewhere.
Yes,
with
indeed.
Business Express
Business
at
Express,
6:45
6:45 a.m. Yes, indeed.
All right.
Have a lovely day,
Have
Lagos.
a beautiful day.
Good morning.